It's starting. Layoffs are coming to the auto industry. We're going to be firing some people, and if you want to be at the front of the line, we will pay you to fire yourself. See, these OEMs, they're looking at their numbers right now, and they're seeing that the sales are deteriorating. They're seeing that a lot of their dealers and their networks are actually turning down allocations, and they know that the environment going forward, they're not stupid. They know it's getting worse. So they're looking at their numbers and they're saying, okay, you know what? We've got to cut some costs. We can't be spending as much money as we're spending because the money coming in is greatly decreasing right now. So Stellantis just offered a round of buyouts to roughly half of its US salaried workers. Now, this comes just a week after they inked a deal with the UAW. So cost cuts have to come, and they have to come in a very large way. And an easy way to do that is by cutting your workforce. And what these buyouts are basically just voluntary layoffs for their workers. So here's the statement that was released by Stellantis, and Stellantis, if you don't know, is Jeep, Dodge, Ram. They say, as the US automotive industry continues to face challenging market conditions, the market's getting worse, Stellantis is taking the necessary structural action to protect our operations and the company. Meaning they're going to cut costs because they're going into these economic headwinds, right? And they're one to make sure that they preserve the company. The way that they're going to preserve the company is by lowering their costs, increasing their margins, because they know they're not going to be selling a lot of these vehicles. They go on to say, as we prepare for the transition to electric vehicles, Stellantis announced today that it will offer a voluntary separation package to assist those non-represented employees. The non-represented employees are the non-UAW laborers. It's the salary workers, right? And they said that they're offering this package to assist those non-represented employees who would like to separate or retire from the company to pursue other interests with a favorable package of benefits. They're going to assist them in helping them decide to leave. So all of that's just a nice packaged corporate way of saying, hey, you know what? We're going to be firing some people, and if you want to be at the front of the line, we will pay you to fire yourself. Now, Stellantis didn't come out and say exactly how many jobs that they wanted to cut, or if involuntary layoffs would come if they didn't get enough of these workers to sign up for these voluntary buyouts. But what I can tell you is before mass layoffs come, usually companies will do something like this. So my wife, years and years and years ago, actually worked for a very large bank, and this bank had some trouble, and they actually eventually went under and got acquired by another bank. And when my wife saw this headline, she said immediately, okay, this is where it starts. And with the bank that she worked with, this is how it began for them, is that they started offering voluntary buyouts to a lot of their employees, people that they tried to get to retire early. They had to reduce their workforce. They had to cut costs. And this is exactly what Stellantis is doing now. And it's just interesting that my wife would make that correlation because whenever this bank went under, this was during the housing crisis, right? And now we're seeing these OEMs, we're seeing Stellantis do a similar thing to what a lot of the banking sector had to do with actually cutting costs. And I think we can really pull a lot of similarities to what happened to the housing crisis with what I perceive to be a similar crisis that's going to hit the auto market. And I really think what you're going to see is a lot of these other OEMs are going to follow suit. You're going to see shifts getting cut, a lot of production getting cut, because they have these vehicles that are sitting across these dealerships and they're not being sold. They can't keep pumping them out and sending them to dealerships. Dealerships are already turning down allocations. They can't hold any more of these vehicles, especially on the big three. These trucks, they are not moving and they can't keep pushing them out. So now what's got to happen? Well, it seems kind of obvious, right? These dealers need to lower the freaking prices of the cars. But it's not just these dealerships. See, these OEMs can actually help these dealerships move this metal. So now, what are some things that manufacturers can do to actually help these dealers move this metal? Well, there's really two things. One, they can add incentive spend. And what that means is basically incentives are they're money that they can give to these dealerships to actually take money off of the vehicles that are sitting here on the lot. So a lot of times you'll see incentives of like 10%. We'll see that come from the manufacturer. We're seeing that right now on these Rams. So immediately when you go and you see this truck that's $70,000, Ram will initially just knock $7,000 off of it because they have that incentive money sitting there that these dealers can actually pull from. And the second way these manufacturers can actually help sell these vehicles on these dealers' lots is by adding or giving consumers special interest rates. The interest rate right now on a new car, the average interest rate is over 9%. And you know what? I can go ahead and tell you that vehicles are not going to move at 9% interest rates. So what manufacturers have to come in and do, and you'll see commercials for this, you'll see ads for it all everywhere, that you'll see like Dodge, Ram come in and say, well, okay, we're offering the special interest rate of 2.9% for 60 months for however long, but they have to actually incentivize these consumers to come buy these cars for these lower interest rates and be competitive against the market. And like 2.9 interest rate is going to be very appealing in a interest rate environment where the average interest rate is 9% on one of these new vehicles. So what we're seeing right now is on some of these vehicles that are sitting longer, that are showing themselves as harder to sell, manufacturers are already coming out with special interest rates for a lot of these vehicles to try to help dealers move metal. I've got a list right here. This comes from a car dealership guy, and these are all vehicles that they're actually offering 0% interest, not special interest rates, 0% interest rates. So you've got the Subaru Solterra, you've got the Ford Edge, Hyundai Santa Fe, the Ford Mach-E. That's a surprise. Ford Edge, Ford Expedition, Ford Escape, Nissan Murano, Nissan Altima, Nissan Rogue. That's another surprise. Mitsubishi Outlander and Murano. And when I say surprise on some of those, obviously I'm being sarcastic. And I mentioned a couple of those twice. It's because it's on the 2023 and the 2024 models. Yes, that's right, the 2023s and the 2024s. You would think they would only want to try to push out the 2023s with this special, 0% financing rate. But no, they already know that these vehicles like the Rogues, the Muranos, that they're not really going to sell all that well, even though they're coming out with the new ones. So they're going to go ahead and throw those interest rates, those special interest rates on these new 2024s coming out, because they know it's going to be bad. And another thing adding these special interest rates will do is lower the monthly payment. And as we know, for a lot of consumers, they don't really think, okay, the total price of the vehicle. They think, okay, what do I have to pay a month to get into this truck? Because if I can afford the monthly payment, I can afford the vehicle. It doesn't matter how much it costs. If you can get me a monthly payment that I'm comfortable with, you know what, I'll buy it. And that's one of the big ways that these manufacturers can help these dealers, is just by getting these customers monthly payments that they can actually afford. And we're seeing that even high demand manufacturers, the Hondas and the Nissans of the world, they're actually starting to increase their incentives. Even though their products are more sought after right now in this economy, they're still seeing that if they want to move metal, they actually have to incentivize. They got to take some money off a lot of these vehicles to actually sell them. And when you see brands like Honda and Nissan and Toyota having to do this, then you know that the big three, these big truck manufacturers that are just absolutely crushed with inventory right now, they're going to have to start pumping up their incentive game if they actually want to sell some cars. And it's not just the OEMs that are doing these layoffs. We actually just had a round of layoffs that came across in Continental. Now, Continental is a tire brand, and what they actually cited, the reason for their layoffs was because that over the next year, they foresee that the demand for vehicles is going to soften greatly. And you're going to start seeing this a lot more in the industry. When metal is not moving on these dealerships, then a lot of the other businesses that need these vehicles to move, they're going to start suffering too. You've got parts, you've got paint, you've got accessories. There are so many different businesses that actually are affected by the car market. And right now with this tire brand, this Continental, we're starting to see the pieces fall. When these dealerships are not able to move these vehicles, then the whole auto economy is going to take a big hit. And now what can these dealerships do to help themselves themselves move the metal? Well, that's pretty easy. They got to cut the BS. They got to cut all the market adjustments. There's still market adjustments out there. It's crazy to think these inventory levels are building up, but you can still go to some dealers out there and see $2,000 to $10,000 market adjustments on some of these vehicles, even the ones that aren't that desirable. It's not too long ago I went to a Nissan dealership and they had $2,000 market adjustment on all their Rogues. Rogues are not selling. If you go to any Nissan dealership, there are Rogues just sitting absolutely everywhere. There's no justification for a market adjustment on these Rogues, and you know what? There's dealerships that are still adding them. Crazy to think about. So the contract that the UAW just got was that the employees, the workers, would get a 25% increase, and that's over the coming years. But immediately what they would get is 11% pay bump. So one thing that was interesting that came up after these deals were inked is that a lot of the OEMs that don't have unions, they're not connected with the UAW, they actually immediately gave their employees a pay increase, and that's going to cause their costs to go up across the board. So why would they do this? The reason they would do this is because it's actually going to save them money in the long run, because Toyota, these other OEMs, they absolutely do not want their employees to unionize. And if their employees are seeing that, okay, the UAW got their members a pay increase, they got them a raise, then you know what, that might start them thinking that, you know what, maybe this UAW, this union work is not so bad if the UAW is fighting for them. And Toyota, these other OEMs, they don't want to have any part of that, and they're going to keep their employees happy. So union's kind of off the table for them. So now one really big problem for these OEMs is they're spending a ton, and I mean an absolute ton of money researching and developing their EV products. Just in the case of Ford, they estimated that they were going to spend $4.5 billion this year, and you know what? They're actually spending more than that. They're missing their estimates of how much money they're actually going to be spending in the EV space. And we're going to see this with the other domestic brands too, that they're finding out that it's costing way more money than they anticipated to actually do these EV build outs. So I actually have not recorded very much here at my lot lately, and there's a reason for that. One, because I feel like the quality that I'm trying to put out is getting a little bit better, the audio, and there's a big highway right next to us, and I feel like you're probably hearing a lot of cars in this audio right now. So that's reason one. And reason two, we really haven't had that many cars here lately. We sold a lot of our vehicles and weren't replacing them because the prices at auction haven't dropped as much as I wanted them to start loading up. But as you can see behind me, we actually have quite a few cars now because wholesale prices, as we've been talking about, have been tanking. So now we are able to go in, we're able to load up again. So that's what you're going to see. Probably from here going into tax time is we're going to start buying a whole lot of cars, and you're going to see a whole lot of cars behind me when I'm actually doing these walkthroughs when I'm at my lot. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take you along for this ride. You're going to see how the prices are going to come down toward the end of this year, and then they're going to get a bump on tax time. You're going to see me load up here at my shop. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me out a lot. And I'm going to show you exactly what's going on in the car market. I'm not even going to say that. I don't know what that is. And these are all vehicles that the manufacturer, and these are all vehicles that even though their products are more sought after right now, and find some, there's a car alarm going off. Jose.